Warning, you are about to enter the BGP suite. No thongs, no boy shorts, no thigh highs, no commandos are permissible. BGP, big girl panties only. So pull up to woman up. And no, please don't leave with your panties in a bunch.
The ice cream machine at McDonald's is broken again. Blame single black mothers. Ooh. I got fired from my job today for smoking weed in the parking lot. Blame single black mothers. It's traffic on the freeway. Blame single black mothers. The award for the most ridiculous deflection statement regarding the murder of Tyre Nichols is by sports journalist Mr. Jason Whitlock. But I digress. We'll talk about that later on. Welcome back to BGP, aka Big Girl Panties. And we also would like to welcome back Mr. Brian Bentley. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining us. Could you briefly tell our audience who you are?
I was a Los Angeles police officer for 10 years. I wrote 3 books while I was on the department, and they were about the aggression that officers have, police brutality, racism, all the things that go on within the department. And also a big part of that is that I talk about what it's like to be a black police officer. It's different from being a white police officer. And so, I go and I speak and I talk on those things, and I've been talking about it for probably like 2 decades, hoping that there will be a change.
Yes. On January 7th, 2023, a 29-year-old African-American man by the name of Tyre Nichols was pulled over. There's conflicting stories, but one of the stories said that he was pulled over because he was driving recklessly. The story got out on social media. A picture of him in the hospital started circulating, and that's where I want to start. When we saw that picture of Tyre Nichols, first thoughts, Adrian?
That was really hard to watch. It was heartbreaking. His head was... I think when I seen it, his mom was describing what she saw when she walked in. And as she was describing it, they were showing his pictures. His eyes completely shut, his face and head swollen, probably double or triple its size. His neck, he was basically on a ventilator. And what she said is when she walked in that room, her son to her was dead. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what it looked like. It looked like he was dead. And you could tell he had taken a lot of beatings to his face, to his head. It was sad. It's even hard to talk about when I'm picturing it in my head right now. It was rough. Mm-hmm.
Nisha Williams?
It broke my heart because I was trying to do everything humanly possible to avoid the video, but it still was being shown any and everywhere, and so it broke my heart when that story first broke.
Mr. Bentley?
Unfortunately for me, it was an all too familiar sight. I worked in Southwest Division, and gang members, people who had issues with the police, would often wind up looking like that in a hospital bed. When I was a rookie, my training officer told me, he said, if anybody resists or tries to fight you, you make sure that you beat them enough so that they'll be booked at the 13th floor of the USC County Hospital. And for those who don't know, the 13th floor is where they book the people that you arrest. And, that was kind of a mantra for police officers.
Yeah, when I saw it, I have a son, and I pray for his safety every time he leaves, and prays for his safety every time he returns. And like Adrian said, he was unrecognizable. When you saw his picture before and the picture after, it was terrible. And he was discolored, had hoses coming out of everywhere. And I couldn't even imagine as a mother how I would feel if I had to see my child like that. I can't imagine. I would be very outraged. You'd have to give me a sedative. So 3 days later, unfortunately, Mr. Tyre Nichols passed away. And then a few days later, we got to see the police video cam. And we really got to see what exactly happened to that young man.
It was very disturbing. As I watched it, there was nothing that was law enforcement related to that beating. It was just a beat down. They weren't trying to take him into custody. They weren't trying to subdue him. They was just trying to beat him.
Yeah, because normally when you get pulled over, they ask you for your driver's license and your registrations. They didn't do that. They ask you, or they tell you what you did wrong. They didn't do that. And they just started yelling at him. And wasn't he in his seatbelt? And they just started yanking him out the car and telling him to get down on the ground.
Yeah. Well, the thing about it is when they were beating him, there were 5 officers there. That's more than enough officers to use different techniques to bring somebody down. You don't have to punch them. You don't have to continue to kick them. There are techniques where they call it the swarm technique, where everybody gets an arm, a leg, or whatever, and they take the person down. And so you don't have to continue to beat someone. So, like I said, it was nothing that I saw that was, law enforcement related, what they were doing.
I have a question for you, Brian. When somebody is beating your ass and they're telling you to put your hands behind your back, get on the ground, but they're socking you, they're kicking you, they're punching you, they're tasing you, they're hitting you with a bully club, are you resisting arrest, or are you reacting from the pain that's being imposed on you?
You're reacting from the pain. You're reacting from the pain. I mean, you give commands, you wait for the person to comply. And even if the person doesn't comply, you can't continue to beat them and tase them, because it'll result in death. I mean, once you tase somebody twice and they're not responding to that, you can't continue to tase them. You got to get down there and physically subdue the person, and not punch them and tase them and kick them.
Because he kept on asking, what did I do? What did I do? I'm just trying to get home.
Right.
What are you guys doing? And they're hollering at him and screaming at him. And they say the police, take an oath to serve and protect. They were serving him elbows and kicks to the face and tasing him. And didn't they have some, what you call that other stuff? Pepper spray and flashlights was going on around. I can only imagine what people go through when something like that is happening.
Yeah, it's very traumatic, and the police officers have to be able to identify that when someone's in a panic mode and not react to it. And there was enough officers there for somebody to take control of the situation and calm everybody down.
Exactly.
The adrenaline's flowing, but there should have been at least 1 or 2 officers that were calm, that would have calmed the situation, got everything back under control. And this brings up a lot of points, because you mentioned the traffic stop. People get pulled over all the time for minor violations, and if they can't find a minor violation, they'll just make up one. The way I was trained as a police officer, we had a pad. I would keep a pad, and they had the most frivolous traffic violations: dirty license plate, something hanging from a tassel hanging from your rearview mirror, anything to pull somebody over. And so, that's a big topic. And I know in LA they're trying to come up with ways to stop that. But if a police officer can't find something, they'll just make it up. And driving recklessly is one that always works.
And you mentioned his adrenaline, everybody's adrenaline going. I'm still not understanding. Here's this young man, Tyre, 150 pounds, they say. What would have caused their adrenaline to go that high where they were just all like savages on this guy? That's the biggest part I'm missing, is like what warranted that type of beatdown.
Well, there's the thing, and most of the people in LA know, the young people know that if you run from the police, you're going to get beat down. And, that's always been something that was, out there but never proven, but it's the truth. And when officers chase people, a lot of things go through their mind, and a lot of them get amped up, and being a police officer goes against human emotion. So, it's hard to just turn it off, but that's your job, and that's what you're trained to do, and that's what you have to do. If you don't, there's the consequences that happen. Right. And you do, the adrenaline gets there. It gets flowing, and officers chase people. And at the end of it, they get violent. They beat them down. It happens all the time.
So something I noticed when they were speaking on the group of men that were arrested initially and fired or whatnot was their experience. We know that they were a part of a group called the Scorpion, right? And so most of them were with the police, that police department, under 3 years. So is it common for them to have that lack of experience but be on that quote unquote type of team where they go out and purposely, seek out individuals they deem to be troublemakers?
Yeah, that's common. One thing about police officers that people think that because police officers go to the same academy and have the same experience that they're all the same. They don't have the same mentality. You have some police officers who are only law enforcement officers because the police department called them before the post office did. And they're only there to get a paycheck. When you call the police and you say they never arrive, for a call, those are the ones who are just there for, to get paid. And they are not taking their oath, to heart. So you do have to have specialized units and younger officers before they get tainted, not in this case, but before they get tainted and before they are just on the job collecting the paycheck. There's a lot of police officers. When I was working at Southwest, I had some officers that would transfer over, and they would tell me, look, I want to promote and be a sergeant. I don't want to get involved in anything. I don't want to arrest anybody. I just want to go through the day and then transfer and say that I worked in a tough division. So, those are the things that, the components that you deal with. So you have to get these younger officers who are still aggressive and still want to go out and make arrests. The problem with that is that once you have officers that work together all the time that don't have any movement, they're prone to commit crimes and become corrupt. In LAPD, we rotate all the time. We rotate between 3 officers, and we rotate like every other week so that we don't get comfortable with our partner and then get together, and then you have these problems. And in LA, you see that because we have the crash. Everybody knows about the gang unit, the crash, and how bad they were. We have vice officers that were they turned out to be bad, and that's because they spend a lot of time together and they,
gang mentality.
Right, they can collaborate and do corruption.
So, I'm just trying to understand the psyche of it. What type of human being do you have to be to beat a person and maybe go to the bar and hang out and kick it, or just go home and go to sleep when you knew that you beat somebody damn near to death and the EMTs didn't do anything. He sat out there for 20 minutes and unconscious and
handcuffed.
Right. How can you process that, and go to sleep and get a good night's rest?
Every day that you're out there on patrol, you lose a little bit of, I won't say your morality, but you get desensitized. Your first shooting, you see someone that's a teenager that's dead, you feel sorry for them, you feel sad for them. The next day, you see the same thing, and pretty soon you just are disconnected from your emotions and your feelings. You're kind of like dead inside. So it doesn't bother you outwardly. But a lot of police officers are alcoholics. You mentioned going to the bar. A lot of them are substance abusers because you try to hide that, but eventually it comes out.
Suicidal? Are they also suicidal?
A lot of police officers are suicidal.
Domestic violence.
Domestic violence. All the things associated with mental illness and having a post-traumatic stress disorder comes out.
So I personally haven't witnessed or can't remember witnessing black police on a black civilian crime. Does that happen more often than I know?
Well, this was rare because you don't find 5 black police officers working together.
Okay.
I guess it's because of that city has a large number of black police officers, but you won't find it in L.A. Guarantee you. And especially with specialized units, you don't have a lot of black officers working specialized units because they're afraid of what officers will eventually come out and tell. There's only so much that you could see and let go before you start talking about it. And so they don't trust black officers to put them in specialized units like that. Mm-hmm. It's usually largely white or Hispanic because they don't trust the black officers. Mm-hmm. So this is something that's really rare. I'm not surprised because I had wrote in my book, which is called One Time, I had talked about, I saw white officers beat black people, and I could tell it was from racism, their racist views. And then I saw black officers do the same thing. And then black officers would say, oh, well, they're disrespecting the race and, they bringing us down. They deserve to get their ass kicked, right? And so you had different thoughts on it, but the end result was the same. Mm-hmm. A beating is a beating by a black cop or a white cop, whatever the motive is.
Once one graduates from the academy, what type of training is ongoing? Are they asked to come in and do a sensitivity training or diversity training, or is there any training that happens after the academy? Or does this one, maybe you get a complaint, does a sergeant ride out with them and kind of see how they're handling things? What type of...
There's a lot of training. Police officers get trained enough, okay? They get enough training. What they have in them is based on their experience, their anger, their frustration. They don't do the follow-up and treat it as an illness or that's something that'll happen, repeatedly. If you see these officers, you'll probably find out that, they've had incidents before because it's a progression. Mm-hmm. You don't go out your first day and just beat somebody to death. Mm-hmm. You beat somebody, they've probably been doing that a long time, And in that case, they have these measures that they follow for people who do shootings. Or if you shoot somebody, they'll take you out the field and give you counseling. But they don't do that when you beat somebody because they don't seem that it's that severe. Mm. But that would work if somebody, because every time you have a use of force and you use aggression, you fight, it comes more easier the next time.
Exactly.
It comes easier, it's easier, and it becomes more violent, and it happens quicker. Mm-hmm. So, you maybe the first time you're trying to diffuse it and you're using techniques, and then maybe you have to use of force. The next time you're not. Just I tell you something, you don't do it, and then violence occurs, right? Mm-hmm. So there definitely needs to be more measures to help officers, but there are a lot out there. There's a lot of training. Officers always find a way to go around it.
So something that I always hear when we have these situations where violence by the police on a civilian results in either somebody permanently hurt or unalived is, we need better training. We need better training. Someone needs to retrain them. They're not being taught properly or whatnot. Do you agree with that, or do you think?
No, I think there's enough training. Officers train, but they don't train the way you think they train. They train to cover up what they've done. Mm. We go in roll call. We talk about measures. We talk about having a list of crime reports. The watch commander will always have a list of crime reports with very generic descriptions, so that whoever you pulled over, by the time you get to the station, you have a description. Mm-hmm. So you have probable cause and reasonable suspicion to pull somebody over. Mm-hmm. So those are things that they train. They train how to get around the laws, how to cover themselves, how to protect themselves when they beat up somebody. It's, I fear for my safety. That's how they train. Mm-hmm. So there is enough training. So
what do you say to those that are saying like I mentioned Scorpion earlier. I'm gonna bring it up again. The current chief of the Memphis Police, which is, a black woman, she immediately, once this happened, she shut it down. But she was actually the reason why the Scorpion team was created in the first place. And that was supposed to supposedly, you know, be better for the community, make the community a safer environment, which is kind of the same thing that they have supposedly, and for LA County with the LAPD and the Sheriff's Department, they have their own groups or whatnot. Does that help our communities, or is that just a way to meet your quotas?
No, I believe that these specialized units are very important, and I believe that if they're supervised correctly, you'll get positive results. This was, what this is just it's just unheard of. What took place with 5 black officers beating another black man. These specialized units have to be monitored, constantly monitored, but there is a place for them, and they can be effective if they're deployed properly.
Would you say that black officers are more aggressive on their own people versus other ethnic races?
That's a good question. I'll just have to think of it in my case. I don't think I was more aggressive towards black. I worked in this area because I lived and grew up in this area and currently live here. So a lot of my issues that I dealt with were personal. Burglaries and robberies at grocery stores and people getting robbed were on the streets that, that I frequent, grocery stores that I went to. So everything for me on the job was personal. So I was aggressive. I was not violent, extremely violent, but I was aggressive in my patrols, and that's because I felt I was patrolling my neighborhood and keeping my neighborhood safe. I also worked in West LA Division. I had the same mentality in West LA Division, however, it's not allowed. When you pull over somebody, you stop them, they say, the mayor is my friend, my personal friend. Well, they're telling the truth, and the mayor is really, their personal friend. They write letters. Black people don't write letters. When we complain, we get cursed out, and that's about it. They curse us, say they're going to beat us up. And then they go about their business. But on the other side of town, they do write letters. They write letters to the councilmen. They write letters to the mayors. So it's a different result. So you really cannot go over on the west side of town and act the same as you can in the black community. You can't do it, and they won't allow it, even though your heart may be in it. They won't allow it.
I want to piggyback on something that Nisha said. She said that it was said that these men were, and I'm paraphrasing here, between the age of 24 and 35. They were young, they were unexperienced, but we witness older police officers that have been on the police force, 10, 15 years that go out here and do the same exact thing. So is that a valid excuse to use?
I think it's not a valid excuse, but it's a reality. A lot of the older officers that you see that have 20 years on, 15 years on the street, really, they're going to be the last one to come to your call. If you need something going down where you need the police to protect you right away, those old officers are going to be the last one. They're there to collect their paycheck, their pension. That's their mindset. The younger officers are the ones that are aggressive, that'll run the red lights, drive real fast. Their motive may not be the same motive that you want. They're there for the action, to get in that shooting, to get involved in that action. But, so it's kind of it's a double-edged sword. So you either get that nice, friendly old officer, or you get the young, aggressive officer. Which one do you need at that time?
So that's kind of why I was, because it had lost my frame of thought earlier, but that's why I mentioned it earlier about the time that they had been, in their positions. Do you think, and I know it's just a what if, and I know we're not supposed to always kind of, rely on what ifs, but do you think if they would have had some more seasoned officers on that particular car in that situation, do you think it could have been handled differently?
Oh, it most definitely would have been handled differently. First of all, you would have had a veteran officer who would have said, we don't have any probable cause to pull this person over, and we have video cameras, so let's not jeopardize our job. Secondly, if the guy gets out and he starts running, a veteran officer would say, well, what do we have? We don't have anything at the time. Just somebody who's running from a traffic violation, and we have his car here, so we know who he is. So we don't need to go chase him. right? So a lot of that depends on being a veteran. When you're young and you're new, all that stuff is exciting. You want to chase people. You want to beat people down. You know, that's that adrenaline rush. You wake up for that. You go to work for that. But the older veterans, man, they're so calm. And a lot of them have experience in that area. So another thing they would say is, oh, he's running this way. He's got to come out on this other side. So we'll just wait for him. We'll just drive around and wait for him to come out over here. You know, let him run, tire himself out. We'll be right here when they come. So experience plays a lot. But the thing is, being on the street is so stressful, and you don't get treated properly by the department or the people who are on the street, because black people have these, this anger towards police officers, especially black police officers, that you don't want to be you don't want to be out there. You know, you want to get out of the field as soon as possible.
So, I'm sorry. Were you
Go ahead. No.
Okay. So, because I keep going back to it. I remember last time we had you on, and we were speaking about it. One of the references that was kind of made, and I think you kind of touched on it earlier, was that, like, you know, if you make us run and we catch up to you, we're going to fuck you up just for making us run, right? So he didn't run in this situation. He kind of kept driving till he got to a more well-lit area initially. And they yanked him out the car, and they was doing the threats and all that. And, you know, he's kind of like, wait a minute, you know. Y'all going too far. We're like, wait a minute, like what's going on? You know, there was nothing that he possibly could have done to be in the position that he was in.
You know, that's hard to say, because one of the things is we don't know what the mindset of those officers were. Well, what did they think really? I mean, did they really pull him over just to beat him, and to, you know, or did they really think he was involved in something? And that's one of the reasons why you can't get convictions of officers. And not to get off the subject, but they were charged and fired, but that doesn't mean that's not the end of the story. They can always be acquitted and get their job back. Charges can be dropped, and they can be police officers somewhere else next week, right? So one of the difficult things is to get into the mind of a police officer when you're trying to prosecute somebody. You don't know what they were going through, what they thought. Like I said before, they can always come back, look at a police report and say, you know, he fit the description of this burglar, or the description of this robber. That's why we pulled him over. You know, they can always come back later and say there was 10 robberies with this kind of car and fitting this kind of description. So that's what we thought. And that's one of the reasons that when you talk about training, that's how officers are trained. That's how departments are trained. Is, you got something right now, but once you go back and look at everything, you can pull everything together and say, this was my reasonable suspicion for pulling him over.
Right.
I have a question. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
I have a question from someone in the chat. His view from the man cave. Shout out to you. His question is, and I'm leaving it to you. How do cops hold other cops accountable?
That's a great question. That is a great question, because oftentimes they don't. And there's been a lot of instances where I've seen officers that were, getting ready to go too far, and I'll pull them off, or, stop it. And then all of a sudden you get a reputation of somebody who's not on the team, not part of the good old boy system. And you'll have a bad reputation. It'll affect how you promote and affect how you get back up. And so, a lot of officers don't even want to deal with that. They figure that it's not worth it. I mean, you have officers who are sworn to protect and serve, but they're not going to risk their career doing it. And stopping another officer from beating somebody is a move that can jeopardize your career. Some officers will thank other officers for it. If you have a partner that you're comfortable with and you stop them, then they'll thank you for it. But if you go to a backup call and there's 6 officers and they swinging on somebody and you're there just trying to break it up, that's damaging to your career. And so officers can only control their situation that they're in. I can, as a police officer, black police officer, I can only control what's in my car, my partner and I. I can't control what else is going on. And so as a police officer, your ability is really limited.
I did one thing. I know one of the things that's new to the force on a bunch of different police forces is the body cam. When when are they supposed to have it on? Because it seems like there's a big space that's missing in that whole when he was pulled over, and it seems like is the body cam supposed to be on at all times? I mean, what is there really a rule, or is it from
It goes from department to department, but it really you turn it on when you're about to go into some type of contact that you think may result in a complaint or something that you needed, because there are a lot of circumstances where you don't want the body cam on. You go into domestic violence call and you see a lady, she's beaten up, and a lot of times they're naked, and people who are shot, the paramedics cut their clothes off, so you don't want it on all the time. And go ahead.
No, because I thought that they implemented the body cams for the police officers to be able to prove that they weren't corrupt.
Exactly.
Well, police officers
So why
don't have
wouldn't
to.
you have it on?
Because they don't have to. Their word is still golden. If I don't have a body cam and you think I beat somebody and I say I didn't, judge is going to believe the police officer still.
Right.
Even though
Still.
wow.
They're still going to be the police officer's word. Okay.
And speaking on the body cam situation, did any of you guys notice that one of the police officers kind of flashed his flashlight on a body cam, like, turn that shit off? Did y'all see that? Yeah.
I mean, we see pictures of, the body cam when officers are beating people and shooting people. But how many times have we seen the body cam where the officers are right, they're not wrong? You don't hardly see that, where they say, see, we shot this person and we were right, or we beat up this person and he deserved it, and you can see it on the cam. It doesn't happen that often. It doesn't happen that often. So the body cam, if I was a police officer, I would not have it on as much as possible.
Do you think in this situation, because it was 5 police officers that, how can I say this, they act in a way where they are trying to show who's the baddest for respect and acceptance, and Nisha just socked him. I kicked him in the head. Is that something that goes on, like that violent competition of trying to get respect from other officers?
In this situation, I'm not sure. They just look wild. They look like
savages.
They look like they were out of control.
Exactly.
Like something was wrong, upstairs. They would just really look like they were out of control. Now, when you do beat somebody down, there is a level of respect when you walk a suspect into the station and they're all bloody and head all cracked open, and you walk them in. There's a sense of pride, kind of, like, yeah.
Wow.
And people look at you and be like, oh yeah, I want to work with you.
You're the man.
Right, you're a badass, right?
Yeah.
But in that particular situation, the one we're talking about, it just looked like they were wild, like out of control, just really kicking. There's no logical reason to kick anybody in the face, none. And if you do that, you're going to cause some serious problem. You got to justify it. These officers have to justify every kick, every punch, and there was no way they could do that, but they continued to do it. Even though they were being filmed, they continued to do it.
And wrote a report which was contradicting to the actual footage.
Well, that's normal.
Oh yeah.
However, I don't understand how officers do that when they're being filmed.
Yeah,
Right.
When they're being filmed. If you're not being filmed, I can see how that's one thing. But you're being filmed. It's going to be watched. Why would you do that? Because you get terminated just for that.
Could it be because initially they thought they would have immunity?
Yeah, I really can't say because I've never been that amped up and to the point where I don't think about any consequences. I wrote in my book the first time that I used force, and it was really bad, and I thought about it all the time. I thought, was I gonna get in trouble? Did I do the right thing? Did I follow proper procedures? Was the guy okay? I was really concerned about it. And I just can't see how these officers could do that, put a person in a hospital in critical condition, and just not, think about the consequences. And then you got to write on paper and explain it. How do you do that?
Well, they planned on lying anyway, because one of the reports, the mother said that 2 officers who weren't involved in the beating came to her house and said that her son was in the hospital and he was on, can you tell me what drugs he was on? So they were setting it up. And then they told her that she couldn't come to see her son. So they were setting it up. I have he was beaten in one location and then he was beaten in another location.
Yes.
Is that two beatings or that's just one beating?
That's one continuous beating.
Right.
But that's very important
Part
because there were more officers there. There were more officers there than those 5.
Yes.
So the ones who were initially there, and we know about the white officer who recently got fired.
Yes.
So they're at that first scene, they really didn't deem that as being against department policy. It was the second part where they were getting beaten. So you had 2 separate scenes. That's going to be very important when they go to court and these officers try to get their job back. They didn't run, but they were aware of the misconduct and didn't report it. So that's that's going to be a very key factor in the prosecution and what goes on forward. Is those 2 scenes.
Do you know why they were charged with kidnapping?
Anytime you move someone, that's kidnapping. Whether you move someone 1 foot across to another area.
So when you say move, because he ran to another location.
Well, I'm assuming that they drug him, kicked him, and I saw it from the video. And I'm just going on from the video. They were pulling him, and so forth. So, and then what happens is they always bring the higher charges, and so
Right,
you can
and then
plead. So you can plead. A lot of those charges will probably be dropped.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Even though this was horrific, and the arrest came, quickly, and the charges came quickly, don't get too excited and celebrate.
And I know social media sometimes can run with some stuff and add some stuff here and there. And I don't know if you guys heard this recent thing about him and one of the girlfriends of one of the officers worked at FedEx, allegedly. And there was some type of, maybe some type of connection or something came from that. When you say how this beating was so savage, it was a savage beating, could it stem from something else other than their fake little pulled over because he was driving recklessly?
Oh, definitely it could. I don't know about specific about this situation, but it happens a lot. I've had partners who would drive on duty to their girlfriend's house, kick in their door while they're in uniform because the girlfriend didn't answer their phone, their call. I've known officers who have pulled over their girlfriends when they're in the car with other people. It happens all the time. It happens all the time. Not to this magnitude, but it's not uncommon. And my training officer, one of my training officers, when I worked with him, he told me, say, look, I'm gonna give you the best advice so you can last long on this job. And he said, that is, you got to remember you don't own a woman, right? It's just a long-term loan. And she can, give herself to whoever she wants at any time. He said police officers don't understand that, and a lot of officers get fired because they're trying to control their wife, their girlfriend, and they don't want to be controlled, and so officers go out and they do stupid stuff. They show up places, they kick in doors, they stalk women. It happens all the time, unfortunately.
I have a question from the chat again. Do you think there should be a situation where a command center can watch body cam footage in real time?
There are situations like that, but they don't. They always say they don't have enough staff to monitor that. LAPD has a few cameras throughout the city that can be that are monitored all the time. They're supposed to be monitored, but a lot of times they don't have the staff to do it. So if they deploy a lot of people like a communications division and they have extra people, they'll have somebody to monitor that. But if not, they don't. And that would be a good idea. But you always talk about having the staff to do it and the resources to do it. There's a lot of things we can do, but there's a shortage of officers and a shortage of money, so those things won't happen.
Do you think adding more Black Americans to the force would be beneficial or detrimental to the Black community?
Well, that's a great question. When I came on the job, I was part of this hiring process where they wanted to increase the number of Black officers. All right, and the idea was we had civil rights activists, and they felt that if we had more Black officers, we'd get better service in the Black community. They felt that they wanted black officers to be able to police the police, right? Make sure that white officers were accountable, but that didn't happen. You know, you had people. I'm sure you guys know there's people who just need a job. It's not about the oath. You know, there's people who used to sell drugs, be in gangs. You know, they decided, you know, you can be a police officer because the qualifications, the requirements are so low. You only need a GED and a good record. So, you know, a lot of people just want jobs. They just want jobs, and so they're not really sworn, you know, to protect you. They just want to get that paycheck. So it doesn't matter. And I've heard all black officers say, hey, you know, you just got to play the game. Last till you retire, play the game. There's a bunch of insensitive comments that go on in roll call between the white officers and the Hispanic officers. But don't say nothing. Don't do anything because you just got to, you know, play the game and get your retirement. And that's how a lot of black officers feel. On the flip side, black officers are not trusted like white officers are. So if you do have black officers in a car, it's more likely that, or it's less likely that misconduct will take place because they don't trust the black officers. So white officers aren't as comfortable, Hispanic officers aren't as comfortable having a black partner. So, you know, they're less likely to commit misconduct or corruption when they have a black officer in the car. So it does make a difference.
So after you see one of the most heinous videos, most violent, non-compassionate videos that you've seen in your life, they arrest these officers. Why do they get bail?
Same way the other criminals do. They get bail. If you're not a flight risk or a danger to the community, then you're allowed bail.
But I would feel they would be held to a higher standard of their accountability, and they should not get out. They should stay in jail until they go to court.
Well, that's interesting because until recently, black officers weren't even charged. You know, with the movement with Black Lives Matters, video cameras, and so forth, more and more officers are being charged. What, 10 years ago, 6 years ago? Nothing would happen to them.
Right, they had immunity.
You know, nothing. They would have believed what the officer said, their report. They wouldn't have questioned it. And they would not have been charged.
And normally when it's white on black crime or white police on black people crime, we have to wait for the investigation. We have to wait and get the details. And, you know, they're going on with their lives. This was very swift. This is one of the most swift cases that I've seen. So do you think that because this was so public, is this going to be the norm for when officers beat up people, or this is just going to be an isolated incident?
This is an isolated incident. First of all, you're not going to get a black chief
Right.
in charge. And a black
And
chief
a woman.
right? And
A
a woman,
black
and
woman,
someone
she's
who really has
everything that you need.
who really has power. I believe it was I can't remember. Maybe it was Chicago. There was a chief who tried to do this, and she ended up being sued and ran out of office. But this is an isolated incident. It's not going to happen again. And if it was 5 officers that were involved, you're right. It would not have happened. It would not happen. So this was, you know, black officers are not part of the good old boy system. Right. It's a hard thing for officers to swallow, a hard pill for them to swallow. But they're not part of the good old boy network. And neither are women. You have a lot of women who, you know, have that tough talk and, you know, criminals need to get beat and, you know, all this kind of stuff. But if something happens, they're out. Nobody's protecting them. Nobody's speaking up for them. When black officers do stuff like this, they say they slip through the cracks. You know, it's the recruitment. They lowered the standards. When white officers do it, it's you know, they were just trying to protect the community, trying to protect themselves. It's a double standard.
Could it be that it was swift because this happened under her watch?
Oh, definitely.
You know, like she created this group of individuals was part of her that team that she created, and so she had to kind of like do something because all eyes was going to be on her because she was the newest appointed chief in that particular state, or you know.
Oh yeah, chiefs and lieutenants and stuff. They're climbers. They'll do anything to continue with their with their careers. She's probably looking at becoming a mayor or running for an office, and so all this is political. And you don't get to that position unless you stepped on some toes and kiss some butt and, do anything you can, to get there. So she's probably well versed in how to deflect the problem and to come up with a solution to make herself look better. And that's what you have in these police chiefs and stuff. The ones who continue to promote is they know how to deflect the blame and use that as something positive for their career.
I want to talk about the EMTs because they got fired, right?
Yeah, I think it's two of them. Two of them got fired.
How dangerous is it for? I mean, okay, so what do we think they got fired for? Because they did not act quickly, they did not come and get the body and take it away. Is that what we think they got fired for?
They didn't react swiftly, and they didn't report as they should. Kind of what they saw. They waited after everything was finally over. Then they finally, took them in and transported them to said hospital.
But are they to make a move based on what the police?
Well, yeah, that's going to be interesting because I know their defense is that the police did not allow them to move it. The EMT should be in control of a medical emergency, but oftentimes the police officers will, come up with a reason why you can't take that person right away because they are in their custody.
Right.
And the scene has to be secure. They have to make sure they don't have weapons and so forth. So, that's going to be interesting. They probably felt they could not go against the police.
Right.
And, there would be,
Because that's kind of their extended family.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
police officers are really vindictive and stuff. So, you don't want to get on the bad side of the police. So, I haven't heard what their statement is and why it took so long.
Yeah, because I was just thinking about it, and I'm thinking, okay, how dangerous would it be for me to be like, hey, we got to
Hey,
get
move.
this
Yeah,
person
exactly.
out of here,
You get kicked in the head.
Is that a part of my job description to put my life on the line to try to save this person that the police harmed?
Right.
That's what I was thinking.
Yes, or even if you feel like your life is in danger, I would assume that. Let's say you do say, okay, I'm trying to save myself. I'll wait till they let him go or whatever the case may be. When it comes time for you to finally grab that person and take them, what happened? You are also responsible for that report.
Right.
So what did you say in your report for them to say?
You getting fired.
You getting fired too.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking they was kind of part of that cover up too.
Well, they're not only, they may not have been part of that, but their lieutenant and their chief, as I mentioned before, chiefs are always trying to preserve their career. When someone dies, pretty much everybody gets fired. Everybody they can. Something like this, criminal. They got to just fire everyone, suspend everyone, and then let the leagues and the unions and the district attorney's office sort it out because they can't look like they were soft.
Right.
Like they let something go. So, like I said, in the beginning, you got to wait for the dust to settle. It looks like everybody did a great job, the captain and stuff, and the district attorneys. But we'll see what charges stick.
I have a
And
question.
who doesn't get their job back.
Sorry. I have a question from the chat. Shout out to you, Jay Shine. Do you think a federal law making false police reports a criminal offense would help?
I don't think it will help because it's already against the law to make a false police report. But police officers are kind of allowed to be creative.
Exempt.
There's a term that came out during the OJ case that was called test a lie, where police officers will move things around and change in words to
fit the narrative.
To fit the narrative. For instance, if you were, and I wrote about this in my second book, Honor Without Integrity. For instance, if you arrested someone in an alley, a dark alley, you arrest them, you find a gun on them, you search in their pockets and everything, and you look deep in their jacket and they have a gun on them. When you write the report, you arrested them 500 feet further down the alley where there was a light. So you arrested them under the light. The gun was hanging out their pocket, and you saw the gun as you were chasing them. That's test a lie. The person did have a gun, but you just made it You just wrote the report where there wouldn't be any questions about it.
Right.
And that happened in the Tyre Nichols case. I think one of the police officers said that he tried to reach for his gun. Oh, he tried to reach for your gun. He tried to reach for mine
Right.
too.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah.
Right. And so, those are things that you write in your report that, justify what you did. And so there won't be any questions.
Yeah.
Let me ask this: what about all these so-called non-lethal methods to get a person to comply? Is that something that's new, or was that
The
all
term,
you want to
the actual term now is less lethal.
Less lethal?
Because
okay.
they did say non-lethal, but people were dying.
Yeah.
Right? Taser was once a non-lethal, but people died, so it's lethal.
So less lethal.
Beanbag shotgun
Yes.
was supposed to be non-lethal, but you shoot somebody in the head and in the heart, they die.
Yeah, because
Right.
it brings me to mind, but the I don't know where it was at exactly, but the gentleman who had no legs, he was running on
the
his nubs.
amputee.
Yeah, he was amputee, and they still shot him like 5 times or something ridiculous like that.
He had a
did have a
knife, though,
knife.
a
He
big
did have a
one.
knife, but
Everybody saw it, right? You saw it?
I saw
Yeah.
it. A lot of times police officers don't shoot out of fear. Police officers write that they shoot out of fear, but a lot of police officers shoot out of opportunity.
Yeah.
Once you check all the boxes, that it can be justified, they pull the trigger.
Because they said they were in fear for their lives. He wasn't only about 3 feet high when he jumped out that wheelchair, and he's running. I'm not trying to be funny, but he's running away. Okay, he did have a knife, but come on now.
Well,
They boxed him in.
Yeah.
that was exactly what was he gonna do?
Mind you, he did stab someone else
Earlier.
prior to them showing up.
Okay, but he was in the wheelchair. He jumped out of that wheelchair. He
And was
hobbled
hobbling,
around,
yeah.
and he
And
ran.
swinging a knife.
And-
Yes.
Okay, but still.
Yeah.
Well, their justification will be that he could have threw the knife.
Yes.
And he was running that.
he was running the opposite way while swinging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He could have
Okay,
threw the
then
knife.
how many times have we seen white boys butt naked swinging a knife and the police is chasing them? I mean, come on.
Ain't
It
a
seems
shot
like
fired.
there's a different protocol
Well, they're
for
scared
the
of us, though.
black officers
Even with no legs.
versus
Even with no legs.
black people versus white people, black criminals versus white criminals. Come on now.
We know that already. That's
Well, I just got to
proven
put it
fact.
out here for the
Yeah,
audience.
exactly. 'Cause that don't make no sense. It made no
Nah,
sense.
he was hobbling.
I know he
and
was
He was
dangerous.
hobbling, and he did have a big knife, granted. And I mean, I think a little bit more time, possibly he probably could still be alive. And they
He would,
Okay,
could've,
but
but
look. Say we're all officers,
Yeah.
and he jumps down off his wheelchair and he starts running. You could just let the little boy run. He gonna get tired in a minute. He gonna get married.
It's gonna hurt on your nuts.
You encapsulated him. Let him run in circles for a minute. Just everybody stand back.
Okay, yeah. Let him just
let
run
this
out.
fool-
Right. But like you said, the adrenaline gets to flowing, and then here's this guy. He did have a knife, and I understand he was a danger even without
Yeah.
the legs. He was a danger with the knife, but
Yeah.
he's running that way. Like you said, he could have ran, or they could have went and grabbed the little bean bag and popped it
they
in
could
the
have,
bean
if they had a
They
bean
could have
bag.
tased him.
or tased
Well, the
them.
thing is
Thank you.
that he stabbed someone
Yeah.
already, so
He was a
they
threat.
can justify it that
Yep.
he was a threat. That
Okay.
if they had let him go away, he may stab someone else.
Mm-hmm.
True.
And as a
Where
police
was he
officer,
going?
And then as a police officer, those are things that you think about.
Where was he going fast? I'm not trying to be funny, but he's such a danger. He was hobbling on to the next victim.
Well, he
It's
stabbed
possible.
somebody.
Yeah,
and
he did
stabbed
get somebody.
somebody
Okay, but
right
he was in the
before.
wheelchair.
No, he stabbed somebody right before, and that person literally was dying.
He
So do
jumped
you
off-
base on how you capture the fugitive on whatever they have done already?
Well, in the actual law is you can shoot a fleeing felon.
Okay.
If
There you
know
go.
If
Okay.
you know someone has killed somebody and committed a felony,
You can-
legally you can shoot them when they run.
There you
Okay.
go.
It may not be. Then you have department policies that may not support that, but legally by the law you can do that. Police officers can do that. Once you know someone has committed a heinous crime and someone in the community could be in danger, you can shoot them in the back.
Good to know.
And he was shot in the back
Yes, he
multiple
was.
times.
Like
And
5.
nothing will happen to those officers either.
I don't think so either. I guess their defense was that and his weapon.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Police officers don't have to give you an extra second or extra minute.
Yeah.
They don't have to. The seasoned veterans will do that because they know the consequences. It's not worth it because they know what's going to happen afterwards. You can get sued, you can lose your house, you can get fired or whatever, and they will give you some extra time. But the young officers will not give you an extra time. They will not give you an extra minute, extra second. They give you a command, you don't do it. They can justify shooting, they will. And it looks good on their record.
So I have a question. Because I have a cousin that, he's a Williams, like our family is, but he was pulled over by the cops 2 years ago. And he keeps his camera on in his car so the police pulled him over and he was like, why am I being pulled over, And they was just like, get out the car. And he's like, I just want to know why am I being asked to get out the car? Why was I pulled over? He's like, if you don't get out, I'm going to tase you. And he was like, I just want to know why. Busted my cousin's window, yanked him out the car. Other cops came and they beat the shit out of him on camera. He's currently, he has a lawsuit and whatnot. And he had broken legs. He was in a coma for a little bit. He is now not in a coma, but they arrested him and they tried to say that he attacked them. So that was their reasons for doing it. And I guess my question is, are we not allowed to ask when we're being pulled over before we give anything? Like, may I ask why am I being pulled over?
They don't have to answer your question.
Okay.
It depends on what you're being pulled over for. If they think you have a stolen car, you're driving a stolen car, you fit they're not going to say, well, we're pulling you over because you have a stolen car. They're not going to tell you if they think it's a felony, some type of crime that occurred. They're not going to tell you what it is, and police officers don't have to. They don't have to tell you that. So the best thing you need to do is comply and hope for the best. But if you don't, you know what's going to happen. If you sit there and continue to say, I want to know why I'm not getting out, until you tell me why, you know what's going to happen.
So
and nothing's going to happen to the police officers.
So your best bet is to just get out the car and do what they say.
Yeah.
Comply and then fight it later.
Fight it later. Your battle is never going to be won on the street because they can call every police officer in the whole city to come
plant stuff on you,
do whatever.
Okay.
So I have to bring this up. Sports journalist Jason Whitlock got on Tucker Carlson's broadcast, our news show, whatever the hell you want to call it. And he said, he was asked about Tyre Nichols, and Jason said there's more things that we need to worry about. I'm paraphrasing here, Ukraine, but if we're going to talk about it, let's talk about these Black broken communities and these communities that are run by single mothers. Which I think didn't have anything to do with these 5 young men beating on this young man. They have training. They are police officers. They are supposed to be adults. They were all over 21. They know right from wrong. They chose to do what they did. Do you think that they plant certain Black people to come up and say the most stupidest shit imaginable to take us off the path of what is really going on?
I think that some Black TV personalities want the attention so bad, and they know that's what's going to do it. If he had gotten up there and said, on January 6th, I want to know how many of those people who tried to overthrow the government had single moms. Right?
Yeah, he would have never said that.
He would have never said that. So if you want to be fair about it, you look into all the incidents. That was the worst thing possible. That's worse than somebody running from the police. Someone's a group of people trying to overthrow the government, trying to stop us from our election process.
Right.
How many of those had single mothers?
Right.
Ask that question.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
Right, and why didn't they ask about the fathers?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are boys.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous the length that some people go to place everything that happens in Black society on Black women, and I'm personally getting tired of it. Final thoughts. Final thoughts, Adrian.
I'm still just so shook up about that whole thing with Tyre. I just want to give my condolences to his family, and hopefully this will be an example, however they handle this thing going forward, that something needs to change. Our police department, I don't know if it's out of fear that so many act this way, because I think all this stuff was happening all along, but now because of cameras and videos and all this, we're seeing it more. It was probably always there, but now we're seeing it. And because I think there are some good officers out there. I think there's probably quite a few. But now we're so dang, it's like PTSD. As soon as they walk up now, you just like, you have an attitude with them because you know what I mean? It's it's just a rough place to be. I feel sorry for so many officers out there that are really doing their job. And I just hope that this kind of wakes everybody up to know how to conduct yourself when you get pulled over. Tyre, bless his heart, he didn't do anything wrong. He did not deserve that. It was not warranted. But we need to teach our boys, our sons, how to conduct themselves when they get pulled over.
For me, I would say, as I've been listening to Brian, who's a police officer, say that for Black people, we already know we have a strike against us when the police pull us over. We already know. So some of the things that we see other ethnicities get away with, we will never get away with it. Whether we have money or we don't, they're going to treat us differently. So when the police pull you over, it's nice to have your driver's license out, nice to have your registration out, nice to have your proof of insurance if they need that, have that out. That's one thing. Have it out. Be ready. And two, if he says, I don't care about all that, get out the car. All the questioning, asking why, you owe me an explanation, I'm not doing anything, I'm going live. Like, it's not worth it, because like he said, they could get away with things that you dead is not going to mean anything. You may have some people protest on your behalf, but you're dead. You may have some people argue about policy changes, but you're still dead. You may have some people that say that we need to change and we need to move differently, and it's the single mother's fault. You're still dead. I would advise you, both men and women that happen to be of melanated complexions, just comply. Just comply. And you can fight it in court. You can fight it in writing. But at least you're still alive, and your family, still get to see you, and you're still here. Because once you're dead, that's it. That's it.
No
like this young man has a son now that's going to grow up without a father. You know what I mean? Families have been ripped apart and broken behind this. You about to have some other men who are now former cops. They about to get in trouble. They may get, time thrown at them, especially because they're Black, right? They're going to be locked up, so their families are also going to be broken behind these moves. So I advise you comply. I advise you to do what you got to do. I advise you just give them what they need so that you can get back home to your families, both men and women. Because I know we focus on our men because, yes, our men face more issues with dealing with cops than women do, but we've also seen stories where women have also lost their lives by being, you owe me, you gonna do this, you did it, and now they're not here either. And so just do what you gotta do to get home. Do what you gotta do to get back to your families and live another day, would be my opinion. And I'm on the fence as far as if we add more Black Americans on our different patrols, if that would make a change. I'm on the fence with that because I know a lot of us don't respect police officers. So whether they're in uniform or not, I don't know if it'll make a difference. I don't know if it will affect change in policies that are being made, because we're the quote unquote targets, right? So I think there's work that we need to do. I think there's changes we need to make, just like we see other cultures, request changes be made, laws be improvised to protect their communities. I think we need that too. Exactly. I really do. So I just say be safe, and that's my final thoughts. Oh, and rest in peace to the young man. Yes. Although we know things have come out recently about how he felt about people in his community, but really? I'm gonna let it slide today and say rest in peace because he's no longer here. So I'll let it be. That's it.
And so my final thoughts are, I've been talking about this for over 20 years, and it seems like it's getting worse. I think that departments need to think out of the box. They need to address these issues as mental health issues. give these officers counseling. It's not about training. They need to give them counseling, have them talk it out, because it's not macho for them to admit that they're depressed or that they're upset or have, emotional issues. It's kind of damaging to their career. But I think that there needs to be some type of safe place where officers can talk it out and get the help that they need, because it's a progression. The first time it's adrenaline rush, it's fine. After that, every night you go out and you look for that beat down. And officers who are going through that need to be they need to have some type of counseling and to stop that aggressive behavior.
Mm-hmm.
This is for the 5 African American young police officers. I don't know where you have been in your life, in your journey. However, I know you see what happens to police officers when they do these types of things to civilians, when they beat up people. They're suspended from their jobs, their pay is taken away. So either you've been in a cave or you intentionally did this to prove a point, or I don't know what was going on in your mind that you would do this to jeopardize your character and also your career and your livelihood. You're fired. I don't know how you're going to take care of yourselves and your families. And to any young man that wants to be a police officer, you were first supposed to be a peace officer. I know it's dangerous out there, but this didn't look like a situation where your lives were in danger. I want you guys to think about something. Tyre Nichols' funeral was on February 1st. That was the first day of Black History Month. My condolences is to his family. My condolences is to his 4-year-old son who will never see his father. Brian, you have several books out. One time, Hit Me Once, Hit Me Twice is in my trunk right now. I saw it. And another book. Tell them about your books and tell them where they can find your books and where they can find you on social media.
You can find my books on Amazon. And the first one is called One Time, The Story of a South Central Los Angeles Police Officer. And I talk about what it's like to be black as a black police officer, not only just a black police officer, but a black police officer who patrols the community that he lives in. That's rare. I was one of the only officers that patrolled the division that I actually lived in. And then my other book is on domestic violence called Hit Me Once, Hit Me Twice. You can find that on Amazon too. And then the third one is called Honor Without Integrity. And in that book, I talk about how officers, as I mentioned before, change reports to make them in their favor. And I talk about the little things that officers do to secure convictions that are not, not necessarily on the up and up, but in their mind, it's an integrity issue.
Yeah, I've read all 3 books, and I really would encourage you to read One Time, because it takes you on his journey for where he thought that he was going to change something in the police department. A young man, gun-ho, to do the right thing, and his dreams were shattered. Yeah, One Time is a very good book. Like, share this video. This video is very informative. It's very educational. It will let you know what goes on in the police officer's mind when he is on his job. Leave us a comment. BGP, thank you for joining us. Thank you for coming back.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hope to have you back
I'll
again.
be back anytime you want me.
BGP, and we're out.
Yeah.
Bye.
Warning, you are about to enter the BGP suite. No thongs, no boy shorts, no thigh highs, no commandos are permissible. BGP, big girl panties only. So pull up to woman up. And no, please don't leave with your panties in a bunch.